Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
I may have shared this story before, but I have so many episodes, it's probably worth sharing again. But early on in my career as self-employment, working for myself, I was an attorney, and I was part of what is now AmSpirit Business Connections. It had a different name. That's neither here nor there. But I remember coming into a particular meeting and somebody saying, "Hey, how's it going?" And, I was kind of down, and I said, "Yeah, it's just, I have a client that's not paying me." And it was at a point where, reminder after reminder, I wasn't gonna collect on the money. And if I recall, it wasn't a terribly large sum of money. When you're just starting out, it's a couple $100 here, $500, $1,000. They weren't huge projects. I want to say it was in the neighborhood of $500. It wasn't make or break me money, but it was more the principle, and it really, really stung to know that I wasn't going to collect on it. And I'm pretty sure this was all pre-email, and you're just kind of getting indications from people, and hey, I'm mailing the check, and it never would have dawned on me that somebody would have said, "Hey, I'm mailing a check," and not have really mailed the check, having really no intention of paying you. And that wasn't the first, but that was probably, yeah, that was the first. But I remember going to the meeting and somebody just saying, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it, I'm getting stiffed," I think was the terminology I used. And the person I shared the story with, they kind of laughed. They kind of laughed and said, "Yeah, that happened to me last month." And in that moment, I just realized it was going to be okay. It was going to be okay, that there was somebody else, and I'm trying to think who the person was. It was certainly somebody that I looked up to, or a colleague, and another self-employed person who's just trying to make a go of life outside of having a job with somebody. And it's not, for those who are in that existence, it's not an easy existence. Being employed's not easy either, but when the paycheck comes every 2 weeks and you're not having to hunt down the money, the origin money for it, it's just a different world. Anyhow, but I remember just in that instance thinking, you know what? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. These things happen to other people. And having that quick little conversation just changed my perspective. And, that wasn't the last time I was ever stiff for money. I can think of a few other times, and it just, in time, you kind of, you're never callous towards it. It's money. It's your time. But the stings were less stingful, less painful, and just didn't last as long. And I've been thinking about that since listening to last week's guest, Dr. Keith McNally. Dr. Keith McNally, I should say. It's McNally, not Nally. And he talked about 2 failed suicide attempts. Now that's a level of despair. That's just a level of despair that, God willing, I don't come anywhere near. I hope the same for you. And I don't know how long this episode will be, but I just, there was so much I wanted to say, so much I wanted to interject in that interview with him, and I'm just like, out of respect, I'm not going to. I'm going to kind of let him share. But I think his story is really one of Um, in many ways aspiring. I don't know what your feelings are on suicide. Some people, well, some people don't like to refer it to as suicide, but neither here nor there. I'm not going to get into the semantics of, someone taking their own life. Um, and I just, I know people out there, they're angry at people who take that action. And I don't want to necessarily get into that, but I, I never really thought about my network as really kind of having that sort of power. Yeah, it had the power to kind of get me over the hump with respect to somebody stiffing me for $500. Um, it should have the power to help us through all sorts of things. And I think that's the lesson in it. That's the real lesson that Dr. Keith certainly left with me, should leave with all of us, and that was episode number 718, and the title is "This is How to Use Your Network as a Lifeline." Um, that's the lesson, is that we have these networks out there, and whenever we're feeling like our backs are against the wall, there are people that we can reach out to. And if get a chance to listen to the episode, it's really, he drew a line in the sand after the second attempt and said, this is not going to happen anymore, and really started to reach out to other people on LinkedIn. That I think there's other places. There's Facebook. Is just pick up the phone and call a friend. But he didn't necessarily feel like he had any friends. But he had a network out there. He had people that, hey, I'd love to just have a conversation, and just get on the phone with people or get over on a Zoom call with people and realize, not all alone. There are people out there, and there are people who care. And so God willing, you're not at that point. That your back is so close, so far up against the wall that you feel like you have no other options. Um, but we always have other options, and even if it's, hey, I got stiffed on this bill, or geez, I'm in the midst of divorce, or whatever it might be. The people around you really hold a tremendous amount of power. It's like we share energy with one another, and I know that can sound kind of woo woo, if you will, but we do share energy with one another, and just having a conversation and kind of being inspired by people, and people lift us up. And the last thing that you can do, the last thing you should do when you're kind of in a bad situation, in a bad state, is to keep it to yourself. I happened to be in a meeting of AmSpirit Business Connections, um, after after that particular episode. I recorded that particular episode, I should say. I recorded that on a Wednesday. I know it was a Thursday. I was at a chapter meeting, and the question. Some of our chapters will start with a question, and the question was, "What do you do when you're having a particular bad day?" People had some fun answers about where they went to sit or had a drink, and somebody had the answer. Their response is, "I just make a point of reaching out and helping somebody else." And in essence, what this particular person said was, I'm hurting. I know there's probably other people who need help too. And by reaching out and helping somebody else, that's going to serve to help make me feel a little bit better. Maybe not change the situation, right? I mean, if somebody stiffs you for $500, doing something nice for somebody else isn't going to magically make that money appear. But at least you're doing something that's going to help you feel better, and that's just a lot of times the little nudge you need in the right direction to um, to to turn the tide, to build some positive momentum going forward. So get a chance, listen to that episode 718. This is how to use your network. as a lifeline. Listen to that episode and think about that when you need a lifeline. Think about it when you think somebody else might need a lifeline. And it might be as dire as somebody potentially committing suicide, or as benign as somebody who just lost a little bit of money.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.